Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, September the 20th, 2021, and we have quite a bit to cover for you today. So let's get into it. So first off, for those that didn't hear about Nicki Minaj and all that, she started making a bunch of tweets, the rapper Nicki Minaj, literally making a bunch of tweets about how, she said she doesn't want to get the vaccine. It should be questioned. Don't take my word for it specifically. However, she said something along the lines of, male testicles being affected in some way or what have you. Now, look, I don't know the science behind what she's proposing. However, it seemed like her message sort of transitioned more to, why don't I have the right to question the vaccine publicly, right? Now, Twitter, I believe, suspended her account, if I'm not mistaken. She then said she'll never go back on Twitter again. A handful of her fans started protesting outside of the CDC. The White House then offered to call her up because of how big of a platform she has, and she didn't take the meeting. There's quite a bit of rappers, at least within the excuse me, the rap community that seem to be supporting her. With that being said, let's also take a look at the other side of things as well. Did she secretly get the vaccine? Is she doing this just to sort of maybe stir up some more controversy to shine a light on her career for more attention? I know people might say, Dave, hey, she's big enough. What does she need the money for? But folks, we know how these people are, right? It's never enough for them. Power cannot help but show how powerful it wants to be, or greedy, or things like that. Just like someone who hopefully will be coming on the show soon. Members will know what I'm talking about because of the Zoom call yesterday evening. As of the time I'm recording this, don't kid yourselves, folks. These elites, these celebrities, they're always worried about losing power, losing the fad, that factor of being in the world of news and things like that, being hot news. They're worried about fading away. It's the same mentality. So we got to look at both sides. Now, if she's being authentic, please forgive me. But again, we got to cover all the angles here, right? The next thing is that, if we take a look here, the U.S. has now been open to fully vaccinated travelers. Look, sure. I mean, what can we say to that, right? Sure, I guess. If respectfully, I'm going to be fair. If you want to take the vaccine and you're okay and all that, then so be it. Or if you've already taken it and you maybe just the first shot, not the second, I guess, yeah, you have to have the second shot to be able to come and go as you please. But again, you all know where personally I stand on this. I just want to try to be unbiased down the middle. The next thing is that the German government wants to censor the U.S. social media network Gab.com over, quote, fake news. Now, okay, here's the thing. I don't know specifics. Truthfully, I did not look into it just because it came onto my news alert on my notes here on my phone, seconds before I pressed record, to tell you folks the truth. With that being said, from what I understand, the last time I checked, the research I did, the founder and CEO and owner of Gab is not particularly a conservative so much as the individual is more so about free speech more than anything, right? Now, again, this is where that line, in my opinion, should be drawn, but it's being drawn way too close to like everything at the moment. Like in terms of censorship, you got to push it way back. You can't, because technically speaking, we can make up legal jargon to cite anything for an excuse to ban a tweet or ban an account or ban not a tweet, even a website from a whole country, right? So again, do I think there should be a line? Yes, of course. And what that line is that if someone is being physically threatened online on any website, big or small, right? Their address is being put up and stuff like that. Precautions should be taken. That should be taken down. The police should make the arrest. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely. Absolutely. When people's personal information and their physical safety is in danger, very different story. But if you make a tweet or you make a post on Gab and all of a sudden, there's just a handful of people that agree and want to have a conversation about your post, and then all of a sudden, the government of that country says, oh, we're thinking about removing it from the country entirely. Jesus Christ. I mean, let's have a conversation first. Let's not jump to, anyways. The next thing is that a volcano in Spain's Canary island, La Palma, has started to erupt after a week of building seismic activity. Well, okay, folks. You all know where I stand on this with regards to the alien side of things. I'm not trying to downplay it, and I'm also at the same time I want to make it clear I'm not a tree hugger, if you want to call it. I'm a big lover of nature, yes, but in terms of the preservation and things like that, I'm conflicted because, to tell you the truth, presuming if we add in the extraterrestrial narrative or element, which I think we're all almost certain is definitely here, right? I mean, we could say that if they're so advanced and so smart, they'd be able to resolve this on their own. And if they're trying to use apparatuses like the UN or the mainstream media to try to warn people about, quote unquote, climate change, these aliens are smart enough to know that the masses are not believing the mainstream media anymore, right? So if that's their way of trying to communicate, to actually tell us, hey, your planet's going to shit, they better find a better way. But honestly, I don't think, in my opinion, personally, I'm just laying it out because we have to cover all the angles, but in my humble opinion, I don't think that's the case. So truthfully, I know people had to be evacuated. I hope everybody's safe. I don't think much of this in terms of like looking at the big picture of the natural events occurring around the planet, to tell you the truth. Just my opinion. I could be wrong, but the next thing is that the FDA panel has endorsed Pfizer's COVID vaccine booster for people 65 and over for high-risk patients, but declines to recommend it for persons under the age of 65. Yeah, I'm not going to spend much time on this because it's a clusterfuck. Pardon my English. It's all over the place, so you all know where I stand on this anyways, and I think we all know where we all stand. The next thing is that it is actually Election Day in Canada. Actually, sorry, before I get to that, let me just say one more thing. Pfizer says early results of its trials show that its COVID vaccine is safe and effective, for children ages 5 to 11. My humble opinion, I believe I have the right to say this. I don't care if YouTube takes me down for this. No, I don't agree. I think long-term research needs to be done, and the way long-term research is done is over something called time, right? Just like when that I believe it was MSNBC host, I forgot which one, asked Bill Gates a handful of months ago, what happens if there's long-term side effects we don't know about? His answer was stumbling. That's for the professionals to find out in the long term. Jesus Christ. Like what? So we can't even have a conversation about questioning the efficacy and the long-term side effects? Right? So I know you folks know where I stand on this. Anyways, next thing is that it's election day in Canada. Look, it's Trudeau versus Aaron O'Toole versus a third-party leader, I believe Jagmeet Singh of the NDP, which stands for the New Democratic Party. I think all three parties are bought off. This third party, NDP, was getting close, I believe in 2010, don't quote me on the year specifically, but was getting close to taking over because of taking over the prime minister's seat in cabinet because of a gentleman by the name of Jack Layton. But if I'm not mistaken, he died of cancer. Now again, there's a lot of conspiracies saying, did he defy the pharmaceutical guys, the media guys in Canada, which are just basically an extension of the US guys, essentially. Let's be real, right? So did he defy it, and that's why he died of cancer? I mean, again, it's very difficult to say, right? So I don't want to spur a conspiracy where there isn't one, but all three choices, in my opinion, are shit. Pardon my English. Again, being in Toronto, keeping my finger on the pulse. Some of you may disagree with me, and that's cool. Totally cool. But in my opinion, garbage choices. But if I hate to be this type of person, but if I had to pick, let's pick a conservative over Trudeau any day. I mean, at least in this certain context, if you will. The next thing is that the Hotel Rwanda hero was given a 25-year sentence in a terrorism case. The government critic Rusesabagina, pardon me if I butchered that, was portrayed as a hero for saving lives in a Hollywood film on the 1994 genocide. Hey, there's a lot of people. I don't mean to assume that this gentleman is guilty. Again, because of the corruption all around the world, especially nowadays and things like that, we have to give him a fair chance and whatnot. So I do not want to comment on things until I know the full context of the gravity of the situation. But again, we see people, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, I mean, you name it. It's coming out in a lot of ways, right? So again, the next thing is that, again, also one more thing, we could argue, to play devil's advocate, that these could be the Ponzi fall people for the elites to sort of usher in a new era of celebrity that people are sort of turning a blind eye to while the old guard sort of gets taken down. We could argue that too. I'm going to be totally honest with you folks. The next thing is that Angela Merkel is on her way out in the next week or two, and under Merkel, just a quick look back, Germany exported arms to the Middle East, strengthened relations with Israel, and welcomed many refugees. Honestly, she stuck with a very strong NATO military-industrial complex agenda. She didn't really defer far from it. That's not for me to say if that's good or bad. My opinion is it's definitely not good. But again, that takes us down a whole other rabbit hole, of the overall apparatus of just the world system in and of itself. So, The next thing is that Syrian military chief makes a rare visit to Jordan. It's the first discussion since the start of the 10-year war first discussions since the start of the 10-year war covered border security and intensifying coordination. I hope it's legit in the sense of legitimate collaboration. We got to presume when these guys talk, they're all liars, they're all deceivers. Let's be honest, right? So it's difficult for me to say at the moment. I don't know what to make of that. Unless we're in the room in the meetings ourselves, who knows if the meeting even took place, honestly. The next thing is that mental health illness surges in Lebanon amid multiple crises, according to Al Jazeera. So Beirut's port blast and an unprecedented socioeconomic collapse have left many Lebanese people suffering trauma. You know, this is something I was thinking about as because of course you folks know what I've been to an extent what I've been through mentally and otherwise, some of you. The thing is that I've been thinking about this on my walks and stuff like that. What about the people all around the world with all these mental health issues? I mean, I call up a friend and I go, I hear about this friend. He's telling me on the phone, Dave, my parents are breaking down because they got a $30,000 cut from their salary because of COVID, and there's no one really to blame because, the company they work for too is taking less profits in and things like that. And it's, again, there are much worse situations than having, a $20,000-$30,000 salary cut. But if your salary, say, for example, is only $50,000-$60,000 a year, like my friend's parents, and that gets split in half, that does a number on you, right? And then and this is within the West. Imagine the Middle East. Imagine Africa, and this is very sad. It's not like, again, this is what I mean. Eventually people are just going to be so desperate and say, screw it. And I hope, and stand up. I'm not saying violently, but again, as I've said before, when people protest and the politicians still don't listen, what do you expect the people to do? What system is there to do? Or what system is there to rely upon or fall back on when the politicians don't listen? It's so unfortunate. Now, the whole thing is, let's do a coup. Yeah, but anyways, it's so hypocritical because the nations of the world say we don't support coups. Meanwhile, covertly they do. Again, all horseshit. Please forgive my rant. The next thing is that Turkey's Erdogan plans to talk Kabul airport control and the S-400s with Biden. Turkey hopes relations with the U.S., blighted by a litany of disputes, can be salvaged on President Erdogan's trip. Erdogan, in my opinion, unless we're missing context here, which we probably are, there's a lot of intelligence side of things that we don't know are true or not, that we don't even know about, let alone if the data's accurate. I think Erdogan's got the playing cards in his hand now. I mean, to be fair, if we argue that the CIA or the military-industrial complex guys wanted this to happen in order to keep the wars going, in terms of the god-awful evacuation at Kabul, which, don't get me started on, just angers me to my core, it's hard to say. But I don't see Erdogan bowing to Biden. Not at all, even on a public front. So the next thing is that Israel carries out mass arrests of Palestinians after the jail escape. The arrest campaign started after the escape of 6 high-profile Palestinian security prisoners from Gilboa prison. Look, if the mass arrests of Palestinians, if these Palestinians are associated with these sort of, with criminal groups or gangs or some type of organization that is attempting to orchestrate some type of catastrophic event towards Israel, I understand. However, if Israel's doing this simply to send a message, again, I don't agree with that at all personally. But again, we need to know the full context of things, not to go against Israel, but not to defend Israel either. We got to play it down the middle. I know, again, we speak quite, highly, but also very lowly of Israel in a lot of ways. And we do this with many other countries as well, for the record. So again, it's just like when, in Latin America, these arrests being cracking down on political opponents, or Putin cracking down on Navalny, which we'll get to in a second. There's a bit of an update on that. It's not for me to say if it's right or wrong. It's the context of what's happening. And again, the power struggle. What do the people want? Is it a tit-for-tat strategy? When you take emotion out of it, and I'm sure many of you folks don't need me to tell you this, when you take emotion out of it, even in the heat of any moment of when you're very anxious and nervous, you think much more clearly and much more strategically, right? And objectively. So the next thing is that the reason why I say that is because if you're someone who is looking at this from a strategical point of view, you do not want to get emotional, whether you're supporting Israel or not, with regards to what they're doing to the Palestinians, because taking your emotion out of it will help you see objectively. Even if you're just an average person like myself and yourself, you'll see objectively what's going on in a much clearer way, which is what the elites don't want us to know about, which could also lead to why these protests are happening, to get people emotional, to create more division, so that mass consciousness cannot be redirected, right? So, sorry, 1 second. All right, so the next thing is that dozens of endangered penguins were killed by bees in South Africa. Some of the African penguins found on a beach outside Cape Town had 20 or more bee stings. I don't know if this is a normal thing in nature. I'm going to be honest. I didn't look into the details of this article. I'm not sure if this is common or what, but I mean, if it's not, then geez, like bees killing penguins. I mean, hey, like, I guess let nature do its thing, but I don't know if this article was trying to push a climate change narrative, if you will, sort of saying like, you know, the penguins they were not where they were supposed to be because of climate change and they got killed by bees and blah, blah, blah. I mean, who knows? We can extrapolate so much. Were they weaponized bees, part of an operation or test, or maybe was it just nature? That's the other thing too, right? The next thing is that Niger's nomadic herders get together to celebrate cultural ties. The annual Cure Saleh festival, bringing together Tuareg and Wodabi pastoralists, marks the end of the rainy season. Please forgive me if I mispronounced any of the respectively these tribes' names and cultures' names and what have you. I wanted to put this in today's news because, again, it's nice to see people coming together, even at a small level. You know, it shouldn't always be negative all the time. It's nice to see people coming together. The next thing is that Guinea refuses to allow deposed president to leave the country. The military says detained ex-president Condé, or Conde, I don't know how to say his name, sorry, will not be allowed to leave Guinea after the coup, defying regional pressure. Look, you know, it's gone to the point, forget even, you know, legal rules and things like this and a form of law. Whoever's got control from a strength of power militaristically is going to call the shots. I don't know what to say after that. It's unfortunate, but it's true, right? The next thing is that the UNSC urges Somalia's feuding leaders to settle a dispute. A 15-member body, which is the UNSC, has called on government leaders to give top priority to holding long-delayed national elections this year. Yeah, this is the thing. When these bodies call on stuff, doesn't mean shit happens. So we're going to move on. Because we can extrapolate so much, right? We don't know what's going to happen, if anything. The next thing is that the U.S. has now threatened new sanctions over the conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray. His executive order raises a specter of further sanctions against parties prolonging fighting and humanitarian crisis. You know, look, I'd like to say this is something clear-cut and good that the U.S. is doing, but I don't know. Would he have signed this if the military-industrial complex guys didn't want him to? Is this something the military-industrial complex and intelligence guys don't care about? We got to think about that, right? It's hard to say. The next thing is that the U.S. Trade Representative says India's MasterCard crackdown is draconian. The U.S. has been frustrated since India's central bank banned new card issuance on the back of breaking data storage rules. This comes down, it's not for me to say, folks, this comes down to the mentality with those within the West and Europe. Should countries respectively get involved with one another in this regard or not? One side argues the economies are so intertwined, but some also believe that's just an excuse to make more of a globalistic system ensue. Others also think at the same time that it's to the point where things are so interconnected, we need this globalistic system. I'm being careful using the word globalist or globalistic, but again, it's not for me to say. I do believe there are valid points to both. It's the people behind it at the top that are really just making both go to hell. It's like with anything in life. You can use things for good or bad, right? And that's what I think is happening here. The next thing is that a mass expulsion of Haitian migrants from Texas continues. Authorities plan to remove 12,000 migrants camped at bridge on southern border within the week. Again, hypocritical compared to Biden's message when he was campaigning, but I'm going to leave it there because you all know how I feel about that, and I think you all have very strong views on this as well, respectively. The next thing is that several were killed in a shooting at a Russian university. People jumped from windows and locked themselves in rooms as a university student in Perm killed at least 6 people. Okay, I might get a lot of shit for this, but I'm going to bring it up because I have to. I do not want to be spreading conspiracies. First off, I'm so sorry for the people that died, the university students, doesn't matter where in the world. You're a young person. You're not trying to cause any violence. You're not involved in any dangerous things in your life. This should not have happened whatsoever. However, to play devil's advocate, again, folks, please, I say this very carefully because I'm not trying to push a fresh conspiracy. Is it possible Putin orchestrated this with some type of mind control weapon or something like this? And some of you may giggle right now as I said that, but some of you may say, you know what? And why do I say that? Allegedly, Mr. Putin is having issues suppressing these Navalny supporters in the public because there's just so many of them, allegedly, all right? Assuming that's true, hypothetically, to play devil's advocate, is it possible that this was used as a distraction? Terrible thing to say, but it would not surprise me. Again, not trying to push a conspiracy, but we have to consider all the angles, right? So the next thing is that North Korea says that U.S.-Australia submarine deal is extremely undesirable. Yong Yang warns a, quote, dangerous agreement could trigger chain reaction of arms races, end quote. I know France isn't happy either, but I mean, come on. U.S. and Australia with the 5 allies or the 5 eyes. I mean, what did you think the U.S. and Australia were going to do? I mean, in my opinion, right? So I know there's way more to it than simply that. I'm not trying to make it seem like I'm smarter than these French politicians, but I mean, at the same time, come on, right? The next thing is that voting has ended in Russia's parliamentary election, and the country's elections commission says early results on Sunday, which was yesterday, show the country's Kremlin-loyal United Russia Party, which I believe is Putin's party, was on track to win a majority despite losing ground to its opponents. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. Either he rigged it or he didn't, or he did a little bit of rigging Putin to make sure he was going to stay in power. Come on. He just amended the Constitution. The guy who basically made himself president for life. What do we think's going to happen here? I mean, I'm being real. I don't mean to suppress or oppress or suppress the hopes of the young Russian people. I really don't, especially if you're from Russia listening or watching this right now. But what else is there to say, right? The next thing is that boxer Manny Pacquiao plans to run for Philippine president in 2022. Pacquiao presents a potential obstacle to Rodrigo Duterte's succession plans as the race for the top post takes shape. I'm going to be honest with you, folks. I'm not too familiar with Pacquiao in his personal life and what have you. I've seen him fight. Great fighter. Excuse me. A couple takes I have on this personally is that I don't really think there's an unbiased way to play this. Anyone can run for the leader of their respective country, presuming it's a democratic nation and a legitimate democratic one at that. But the thing is that, again, the fact that politics has seeped into, celebrities all around the world and athletes, and they want to get involved in politics now, I guess it's a good thing. As they say, politics are the new Hollywood, or celebrities, as they say, because politicians are now dating, all this stuff. I don't need to explain to you guys, but again, if he really wants to try and do something, then so be it. But it just goes to show at the same time how much it's bothered these celebrities and these athletes, I guess, in some cases. Now, to play the other side of things, it's possible Pacquiao could be controlled opposition. Right? He's offered a bunch of cash under the table, uses his platform, doesn't even need to leave his house, just does stuff on social media, and then ends up dropping out or whatever, right? In order to help the opponents win. Who knows? We got to think of that too. Let's be honest. These guys, these celebrities are involved with intelligence operations more than we think. So, with that being said, folks, hope all of you enjoy. We should have an early release of Let's Get Banned coming out later on today. If not, at the latest, it will be out for members tomorrow morning. But either way, we have lots coming very, very soon. Cheers.